That's the FBI director. Delaware Senator Chris Coons is also a member of the Judiciary Committee. He questioned Patel. He joins me now. Senator, first of all, what do you take away from Kash Patel's performance today?
Well, Anderson, it was just that. It was a performance. He was testifying really for an audience of one, President Trump. During his confirmation hearing months ago, I asked him who the FBI director works for. And he said, not the Constitution, not the American people, but the White House. And then he demonstrated that both in his oversight hearing today and in how he's conducted himself as the FBI director. He's been more interested in revenge and retribution, in pushing out or firing folks who had investigated President Trump or who were connected in some way to January 6th investigations, and frankly, in supporting President Trump's budget request, which would cut $500 million out of the operating funds of the FBI. So today was a heated, combative exchange between the FBI director and many of my colleagues. Overall, I'm not sure it advanced the national security of the American people.
You questioned him. You pointed out to him that he had said to you during confirmation hearings that there would be no politicization of the FBI. Do you think he's lived up to that?
No, in fact, the opposite. I pointed out that a number of respected, seasoned senior FBI agents have been pushed out. Two of them are now suing him, claiming that they were fired only after being grilled on their political loyalty. So he did not answer those questions to my satisfaction, and in fact became very aggressive and insulting, frankly, to Senator Durbin when Senator Durbin asked him about some of the more recent and high-profile firings.
Your colleague, Senator Booker, told the director that he doesn't think he's fit to be in the FBI, and he also said, I think you're not going to be around long. Do you think that's true? I mean, Senator Booker was saying that, you know, the president doesn't necessarily stay loyal to people like Kash Patel or other subordinates. Do you think he's right?
Well, former Senator Sessions was one of the most loyal and most active campaigners for Donald Trump in 2016. He left the Senate to be his attorney general. I don't think he made it a year when Jeff Sessions, as attorney general, made a decision that actually followed the law. President Trump fired him. So Director Patel is getting some heat from the right over his handling of the Epstein matter and not fully releasing the files and directing full transparency. And obviously, he had some contentious exchanges with members of the Senate today. So I do think some of how the Charlie Kirk investigation was handled has also raised concerns. But frankly, it's hard to know who's going to last how long in the Trump cabinet. He likes to set people against each other, and he takes a lot of input from outside of the world of career and professional leaders of law enforcement. If Laura Loomer takes a disliking to Kash Patel, he may be gone the next week.
And we saw Director Patel on television on, I think it was a morning show or a cable news outlet, revealing evidence and things that the FBI had just determined in the investigation of Charlie Kirk, things which other prosecutors would normally not be revealing other than in court because you don't want to taint a jury. It seems that this director of the FBI has no such qualms.
He's been very eager to get ahead of the story, to be the first to break information, even when it was wrong. And that does not help or advance prosecutorial conduct or help secure a conviction. So there have been some questions and criticism about his tweeting and his speaking out about details of different investigations before they're in front of a jury.
Yeah. Senator Chris Coons, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Anderson.